On today's show, I don't know, is this the moment suddenly Anne materialises on this podcast? This is K-Rockcast, the podcast where music and perspectives collide.
I'm Anne, a music lover who's the ultimate fan.
And I'm Kelly, a professional musician. Join us as we dive into the world of the Rose and other Korean and Asian rock bands.
Sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we'll wildly disagree, but what's guaranteed is a passionate, hilarious, and unfiltered conversation about the music that unites us and the bands that inspire us.
Hi, welcome back, folks. You've got me for a change introducing the show, just to confuse matters. So in today's episode, which is Into the Snooze, we are going to do a deep dive into the song Snooze in recognition of the 3-year anniversary of the song. And as something new, we are joined by guests from another podcast who will be breaking down the song with us. And do you want to introduce our guests?
Yeah. So, Kelly, I am so looking forward to this conversation about Snooze with our guests, Kayla and Bethany from the podcast, Stanning BTS podcast. Kayla and Bethany, welcome to K-Rockcast. Do you want to share a little bit about your podcast with our viewers and our listeners?
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here and to talk about this incredible song today with you. We are Stanning BTS. We're an informative fangirl podcast about anything and everything having to do with BTS. We cover their current events and we love to analyze their music videos and most of all, their music production and their lyrics. Most recently, we've been getting into their Arirang album and cannot get enough of it.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've been a listener of your podcast for years now. And it was so fun. It feels so full circle to bring you on K-Rockcast because you really are such an inspiration for me. When we always joke, Kelly and I, of like the story of how we started K-Rockcast. You know, she kind of DM'd me one time and it's like, hey, you interested in doing a podcast? And as I was thinking about like, should I say yes to this like crazy ass idea? I thought of you guys and always how I love two things. I loved your album reviews. So by the way, the album review for Arirang is incredible. Everybody needs to go listen to that. But I loved how you really talked through the production and the lyrics. And as a listener of your podcast, I always came away feeling like, I'd never really thought about that song in that way before. So you always opened up my mind to a new perspective. And I loved that. And then I loved the community you built through your podcast, through your audience. And so it was kind of an inspiration for me with Kelly as my partner with K-Rockcast and thinking about what we want to do and what our focus is with deep diving into the music of these great artists that we love. So thank you so much for all that you guys do. You've been doing your podcast.
Gosh, we've been doing it since 2018.
That is incredible. You're almost like 10 years. You're coming on 10 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Kelly, time.
There's our future, man. I mean,
so I have
to totally do it. Yeah.
I know she says you do. You're stuck with me that long. We're married now, Kelly.
Oh, God. I at least thought it might have been somebody handsome and gorgeous, and I get you.
You're stuck with me. Well, I'm excited today to dig into Snooze. This is going to be so fun. I feel like this is perfect episode, Kelly, for me. This is like the merging of my two obsessions.
I am so glad you called it an obsession. I refer to it as your full-on delusion.
I mean, let's be real.
Perfectly honest.
Yeah, let's keep it real.
Obsession is the correct terminology. There is a shrink's couch with your name on it. That's all I'm saying.
It's so true. I am going to have to try to hold back my gushing today because I adore Suga. And of course, Kim Woosung is my number one. So
you won't. Come on, you won't stop gushing. I know exactly what you're like. So because we've swapped things around a little bit today, I'm going to do the song credits for this one. So obviously we are looking at the fantastic track Snooze, which features Ryuichi Sakamoto and Kim Woosung. And the release date of this track was April the 21st, in 2023. The album was D-Day, and it was produced by El Capitan, who you may have noticed has been sort of doing a little bit of the rounds on K-Rockcast. The composing and the arrangement was by Agust D, El Capitan, Ryuichi Sakamoto, and Woosung. The background vocals were by June, and the guitar and the strings were by Vendors, and then in brackets, Lewis, and El Capitan on the string section. Keyboard, obviously, Ryuichi Sakamoto and El Capitan. Synthesizer was El Capitan, and vocal and rap arrangement, obviously, Agust D. And the recording engineer for this one was Agust D as well at Genius Lab. And the digital engineering was done by El Capitan, and it was mix engineered by Yong Woo Yang at Hype Studio. We are going to get into how this came about and how these two worlds collided. So what is the actual history between Suga and Woosung? Now, I think we have a little clip, don't we, to play out?
Yeah, here, let me play a clip for her.
How did I feel when I found out Suga wanted to work with me? I mean, so that's the thing. Like in the beginning, how we got to know each other was he saw my music video called Face, and then he contacted my friend that we knew together, but I didn't know Suga. And we didn't know of each other, and then he contacted that friend. That friend made like dinner plans so we could meet, and then from there it was more like, oh yeah, like I would hang out, and then I would go to this place, listen to some music, and we really shared a lot in common and what we liked in music. So it was always like a thing. Before COVID, we were actually working on something for his mixtape too. But that couldn't come out because of the Rose reasons. But you know, so it was always expected. Kind of, we always wanted to work together. So I was just honored, you know. And he made a beautiful song. He had that rap part. Yeah, when Snooze, he sent it to me. He had the whole rap part done with lyrics, and then so the chorus was just empty. And because he had this idea started, it just flew.
Poor Sammy and his ability to speak English. So he's been asked quite a bit over the years about this relationship, kind of how it's come about. I love a few things from that clip. One, I love this friend that played kind of like matchmaker. Like, I love this, like, oh, we have this mutual friend, like, organize dinner for us to like go like hang out.
Like the weirdest blind date ever.
Yes, that's what it made me think of, like a blind date that got set up by the two of them, which, like, I just think these two as friends is hysterical because Kayla and Bethany, you know, Suga, like, he's so introverted and like very like reserved and quiet. And Sammy is like, what? He's like a yapper. Like, can you imagine those two?
I think he has his moments of being introverted. I think
he does, but I feel like
his public persona is very much. But generally speaking, I think as a person he's a bit more like Suga, to be honest. Whereas Sugar's a little bit more controlled in public.
Yeah, I feel like though, like Sam would just sit down with him and just be yapping his ear off about music. That's kind of how I imagine that.
Stick two musicians in a room, it doesn't matter how introverted they are, they're always going to sit and usually yap about music anyway. It doesn't matter. It's just a given anyway. So Woosung shared that he first met Suga around the time of his solo album Wolf, and this would have been around 2019. And Suga saw the video for Face and contacted Woosung through his mutual friend, and that's how they arranged this basically blind date as such to get to know each other and then develop the friendship that has come out of this. And they'd hang out and listen to music and obviously talk about it. And before COVID, Woosung and Suga were actually working on a song on Agust D's album D2, but the song couldn't come out because of conflicts with the Rose, which we're all very, very well aware of. And I think the rest of the world is now that the documentary has come out. So yeah, it's an interesting combination, those two, and I can see them getting on very, very well.
I
It
know.
feels very a Yoongi style to go through a friend instead of just saying, "Hey, can I have his number?" Especially in Yoongi's Road to D-Day, that documentary, you really get to see him around other like newer producers that he's not worked with before, and he is quite quiet. So I wonder if their mutual friend at all had to kind of just be that bridge for him to help kind of like get these two together. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I love this like little thought though that they could have even had something that would have come out before this song,
Mm.
and just how I feel like Woosung's really saying like we knew we always wanted to work together. It
Yeah.
just hadn't really come through, but like this was, the right time. And this song honestly catapulted the popularity of the Rose. It truly became an entry point for so many fans, myself included. This is how I found out about the Rose. And I can just remember like the first time I listened to that song as I was diving into D-Day album, I just couldn't get this guy's voice out of my head. And I remember going to my friends, my BTS friends, and I was like, who is this artist? Like, who is this Woosung from The Rose? And they were like, oh, you've never heard of The Rose? I was like, I've never heard of The Rose. And they're like, oh, there's this Korean rock band. I was like, I don't like rock music. Like, I'm not going to give them a chance. But I just could not get this voice out of my head. And I think so many people were truly captivated. I also love that Yoongi gave him the freedom to basically create whatever chorus he wanted, which to me, shows the trust that Yoongi had in his talent and what he would create.
And like the appreciation of his talent, of Woosung's voice and his ability to write that chorus and bring, the melody that would be the perfect tone for the song. I just love that they could have worked together on D2 and it didn't work out, because I think D-Day was the perfect place for this song to end up. And it just makes me really happy that, Yoongi kept Woosung in his mind the whole time of like, I know I want to work with him. I know I want to make music with him.
I feel like I would have loved to have gotten him as a guest on Seshwata. But I think it just, Kelly, I feel like the timing, right? So 2023 for the Rose, when D-Day came out, they were in the throes of finishing up their festival run, going into releasing their dual album. And I guess he just probably didn't have the time. But what a neat conversation between those two artists that would have been on Seshwata.
I can see that
I
probably
love it.
coming out at some point, them sitting down together and having a conversation. I think that'll happen at some point.
Oh, I hope so. So there's a great live stream that Suga did on Weverse as part of the release of D-Day. He went live on April 25th, and I think there was just some really interesting nuggets I kind of want to get people's thoughts of. That kind of sets the tone, I think, as we get ready to dive into the instrumentation and then the meaning behind the song. So he said that he can't pick a favorite. Kelly, as a musician, I would love your thoughts on this. Like, is it hard for you on your album to just easily pick a favorite song? Is it like your children where you can't admit if there's really one that sticks out?
It's really easy to pick the one you don't like.
Is that true?
Honestly, it is. It's really easy to pick the one that you don't like, and that's normally because there's something that you would have done different in the studio when you recorded it, and all you can hear is that one thing, and it's just, it would have been so much better if I'd just done that. And it could be something minor, but you'll hear that louder. It's like a loud klaxon every time you hear it. But I think when it comes to favourites, it flows, and I think it depends what mood you're in. And I think one of the things you have to realise is, as an audience, you don't get it until it's finalized, whereas you birth it, you nurse it through its infancy, and you see it go through all of these changes, and then somebody else gets their hands on it and molds it slightly as well. And it can become something that is, it kind of, I don't know how really to explain it, but you do love everything because you've put your heart and soul into it, but sometimes you get to the end of it and you just go, yeah, what's next?
I love that he kind of
Yeah.
admitted in this live that if he had to pick, if there was just one that maybe kind of was a little bit above the rest, that he would pick Snooze. I think it goes into how personal this song is in terms of the message and how important that message is that he's bringing through in the song. Now, Kayla and Bethany, did you know this, that he wrote it while he was hospitalized?
I did not know this piece of information, and I wish that I had when we originally reviewed this song on our show, because I think it puts a pretty big spotlight on his verses and what he's saying in this song. I can see how he felt particularly inspired writing the lyrics after like having this like health decline.
And I'm even trying to remember, I don't even remember knowing he was in the hospital
Yeah, me
during
either.
this time.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
didn't know
because
that.
he says that he was supposed to release D-Day in November of 2022. It ended up being released in April of 2023, but he couldn't meet that deadline. And that since he couldn't, it caused stress, which led to his health deteriorating. He lost a lot of weight and he had to go into the hospital. He was there for about a week. And while he was there, he described it. Kelly, I've heard you talk about, you know, when songs come to you like lightning in a bottle, but he said it all came out at once. And as we get into this song, I feel like you can tell it just feels like it's something he has to get off his chest. And he said as soon as he left, he had to record it. Like immediately, he had to just get it out. What's your reaction, Kayla, to that?
I mean, honestly, I think it's a good thing that we had no idea that he was hospitalized during that time. Like as fans, we don't really need access to the artists in that way to know what they're going through health wise. But I really understand the passion that he brings forth in both his delivery and the lyrics because of that background information. Just knowing what he was going through, I think it makes sense that this song came out of that experience that he just felt. We think of Yoongi as someone who is like a musical genius. He gets the passion for something and he can just do it, right? And to such a high level. And I think this is one of those instances where he just felt, okay, I have to. And I think that's a powerful, very powerful moment and experience for him to go through and then put that into music. He was just talking about in the BTS Return documentary on Netflix how the way that he approaches making music, he wants it to be something that he's going through right now. He wants it to feel like he is creating art that is personal to him and shares his perspective. But he also needs to couple that with like, how are people going to receive it? And what is it going to mean to someone when they listen to it? I think this is one of those songs that does that completely. It was cathartic for him to make, but it's the same for us to listen to.
I was just going to say that I think one of the reasons is you can tell that this is so raw in his actual delivery and the way that he has the ability, it's this cathartic nature, as you said, of how he puts it across. And the thing is, when you're actually living in the moment of your art, it's so much easier to emote it. And there is nothing worse than when you're given a song and you can't emotionally connect. Whereas if it's your words, it makes it so much easier, which is also one of the reasons as well that I think he actually gave the choruses to Woosung, because he knows he's an emotive singer. And to give him somebody else's lyrics, you've got to be a really good actor to be able to act that level of just sheer power and sheer emotion. So I think that's possibly one of the reasons that chorus was given to Woosung to write. But you can tell this was at one of his depths, and the way it is delivered is perfection, and that's why it works so well as a song. He's not telling a story.
Yeah.
This is a diary entry, as we've said many a times before.
Yeah, Kelly, you're so right. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that you just said that like I feel like I need to hold off because it's kind of goes into like some of the meaning behind the song, but I love some of those pieces that you shared. I have a couple other things from this live, then Kelly, we're just going to dig into the instrumentation. We'll talk about this a little bit in the lyrics, but he did share that there's two previous songs of his along with Snooze that he feels kind of all come together. They have a similar mood, a similar tone. One is So Far Away, one is Dear My Friend, and the other is Snooze. Now, So Far Away, we'll talk about that in the lyrics because there are literally lyrics that he reuses, but I think in a different way. So I'll save that for that discussion. And then finally, El Capitan, that we said it was a major creative partner for Suga on this song, admitted to Suga that it's his favorite song off of the D-Day album that he worked on so heavily with Suga. And also that when he did the arranging of the strings, this song made him feel so sad. And it really had like an impact and kind of an effect on him. I think that goes into, again, the meaning. So maybe we can revisit some of that when we get into that part. Kelly, why don't you kick us off with your analysis on kind of melody and instrumentation?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I love this, and we've discussed this in previous episodes, is this is lo-fi hip hop, or we're verging in trip hop territory here. And I love trip hop. It's very much a British music thing, but it does eke out into the rest of the world every now and again. So the beats per minute of this one are around about 80. It's a bit, I've had to sit and count it. I got my fingers out, but we're around about 82, I think. And it's in the key of F minor, and it's a 4/4 signature. So we are stuck very nicely, even though it's trip hop, we're very nicely in pop territory. We're not really moving away from that at all. And the main hook of the entire thing is that haunting piano loop. And it is so simple. I mean, Sakamoto, absolute genius. I mean, I love his music. As you are well aware, I am a soundtrack girl. So he is one of those people that is on my list and always has been. And there is hints of one of his greatest pieces in this, and it has got that very heavy lean towards Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. So if you listen to the piano loop and you listen to Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, you can pick up on it. There is that definite sort of unctuous sound that sits within them, but it's a very ghostly refrain, which also adds to this sort of attack of what Suga's trying to get across, because I think that is actually more about his delivery is attack, but I'll get onto that in a little bit. One of the very beautiful things about this, and you don't really pick it up unless you've got really good headphones on, but underneath this beautiful key loop, you have this really nice thin section of white noise, which creates this lo-fi feel. So I don't know if anybody listens to lo-fi, but basically what it is you take a big song and you strip it back to its bare necessities. And a lot of the time, the idea is it's played through like, you know, a vinyl sort of setup through crappy speakers. So you get this little hiss and pop and crackle.
Yeah.
And that sits underneath it. And it's so subtle, but it's there. And I think if it was taken away, most people would be like, there's something different with this song, and I can't quite work out what's wrong with it. Now, the drums are basic, and that sounds ridiculous to say because it's trip hop, but it is a very basic pattern. But the very clever thing about this is you have this very, very dry snare. And what they've done is they've over-processed the snare. So it's really crisp and it's really dry. But it hits every time that Suga isn't mid-flow. So it will hit right after. So it basically acts as a crescendo. It's a full stop after every sentiment that he's made just to hammer home what he's trying to say. And this also goes with the kick as well. It's very heavily processed in the sub sort of section as well. So it's a very deep thud. So if you have really decent subwoofers in your car, you will feel this rumbling as you're actually listening to it as well. And then to go on to the trip hop, so it has what we refer to as trap style hi-hats, which is that sort of fast roll. And you tend to get that as you sort of coming into the chorus and back out. So it picks up a little bit more towards the end of the actual song. But what it does is it sort of speeds you up and then slows you down, and it sits quite nicely back into this 4/4 groove. It's nice and solid. The bridge and the outro is really where it becomes a rock song, because it's kind of classed as a hip hop rock song. It's not. It's kind of lo-fi hip hop, to be honest, just with a bit of guitar in there. And that only really kicks in as a rock song because then you get this little bit of overdrive and distortion in the guitar towards the end. And it's nothing fancy, but it works because everything else is so stripped back. And we're still working on this really beautiful piano loop. Now, obviously, you've got the synths underneath that, which ghost echo it underneath. And then you've got the strings, which harmonise above it later on, higher up. It's very cleverly done, and this is all about layers. It's literally just layering all the way through. And it builds slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly until you get this huge section towards the end, which we'll talk about, I'm quite sure, when we'll get into the lyrics, because that's kind of where it hits home. Yeah. And then it fades out. But it only works because you can build in layers and take out layers. Now, the piano, as I said, is so simple, but it's haunting. So we have D flat major 7, then it's E flat, and then it's B minor. And then we just have this really lovely top level, just sort of refrain of a few notes at the top, just to hammer it home about how haunting this is. And I think one of the things that underlies this entire song is the harmonic complexity of it. There are so many layers. There is so much vocal work in this that you can't distinguish at all. You can probably pick up 2 or 3 bits and pieces. But I think if you actually saw it split out, it'd be like, how many vocal takes did they do on this? Because it's so present and thick, and then just so subtly done. And I hate to say it, ladies, and especially to Anne, because I'm going to upset her with this bit. Woosung is literally in this. Woosung is literally in this song as a vocal reprieve. He is there to bring it back down, to reduce the energy. And that's the whole reason that the vibrato and his rasp is needed, and why it's so soft. Because otherwise, this wouldn't have the visceral effect on people that it does.
Yeah, Bethany, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that Woosung's part is a reprieve for the song. Yoongi's rap, I've kind of talked about this a lot in our episode too, is just his rap is so intense. It does kind of have this like visceral reaction with how he's rapping towards you so passionately, almost kind of aggressively at times. And Woosung's voice sounds like he's like picking you up and carrying you off, like he's cradling you in his arms almost. And I absolutely love Woosung's part. And Kelly, I really appreciate your breakdown of all of the instrumentation too and the production, because I feel that it supports so much of the lyrics and the meaning, and how their vocals and Yoongi's rap really has so much effect on your emotions when you're listening to it. And the production is absolutely key in supporting all that.
Yeah, I think every time people describe this song, and you use 2 different words, Kelly, and yours of haunting and ghostly, like I can't help but use those words to describe it too. And I think that goes into the emotion that it conjures. And I think similarly, I kind of described it as when the chorus and Woosung's vocals come in, it feels like a release. this like build. And like you said, Bethany, it's, you know, Suga's rap is very intense and kind of coming at you because he's very passionate about what he's saying. And then, as you said, you need this kind of because then Woosung's voice kind of lets you like, okay, like I can kind of take a breath now, and then you're ready for the next hit that comes at you with the second verse.
It sounds very silly, but it's almost like a Disney technique. That's the most ridiculous ideology I'm going to put in front of you. But what they tend to do, and they did so well in the 50s and 60s with their cartoons, was every time that the princess or whoever it was in some form of peril, you would have this build and this angst and this crescendo, and then the reprieve would come in. And it would be a lightness. There'd just be that break in the light, and then it would build again. It's such a traditional technique to do, but that's kind of what it reminds me of. I've kind of, I hate to say it, but I've got Snow White in my head because this literally, it's like the soundtrack. It's so silly to say, but it literally forms the same way. So the fact that Sakamoto's on this, and you can tell he is a fan of Sakamoto in how he writes.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. It really does.
Yeah, I also have to echo Bethany. I love, Kelly, your breakdown of the production and how it brings the emotion that we're looking for through all of the layering. Woosung's part is, like you guys said, such a reprieve, such a relief from Yoongi's rap. What always stood out to me from Yoongi's rap delivery is how much it builds and builds and builds in intensity and in like this earnest need for you to heed his advice, to listen to his message. And when Woosung comes in and that kind of drops off, it gives you the time to reflect on the intensity of those verses and what he's telling you and asking you to do. And so it brings this beautiful balance between this, here, I'm going to hold you and carry you, that Woosung's doing, and comfort you through this intense emotion that, you know, we're feeling and experiencing there in the verses through not only that rap delivery, but the layering of the production there.
Yeah, I always felt like as he goes Suga through his rap and his verses, it gets more and more pleading, and almost by the end, this sense to me of desperation. Like you're saying, kind of, Kayla, like he wants the listener to heed his advice. And he's just, you know, I think back now to the story we heard him share in that live of him being in the hospital as a result of being stressed over not releasing his album when he thought, and how that affected his physical health, right? And just what he's saying in this song to younger artists of just, you know, being, not to get too far ahead, but, you know, it's okay to take that step back. So that desperation in his delivery leads all the way up to the very end, to where when he says dream, the last line, he's literally out of breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so, it just hits you so hard. What's anybody's thoughts on that?
I just love when he does this. He also did that in his song The Last. And when we went to his concert for that tour, and he ends with The Last, and he is literally stripped down. The stage is taken away. He's standing in the middle of the arena on the floor with nothing around him, just a microphone, and he's out of breath. He's left everything there. And that's the feeling that I get from this too, where he's giving everything to the listener in his delivery. And, you know, like he feels like he's giving his whole self, everything that he has to say, everything that he believes. And I mean, being out of breath there, I think only leads to the bigger feeling of the desperation coming through.
Yeah.
Kayla, I agree with you too. I also think a lot about the song First Love, which was one of his solo songs that he did with BTS. And he also gets breathless during his rapping in that song as well. And this is when you know Yoongi is putting his entire body and soul into his rap. And it's not only a message that connects to him, but it's a message he's desperately trying to get to someone else. And you can hear that. And I think that's why he probably pairs this song a lot with Dear My Friend off of D2, just because of that deep emotional connection that he's trying to speak to other people with what he's saying.
One last thing, Kelly, before maybe we kind of transition into the meaning behind the lyrics is I'm interested in your opinion as a musician. I think this is an interesting inclusion of the phrase in English. It translates to, you know, it will all be okay. And he says it 16 times over and over again, which can you think like there's a risk to me that can become stale or stagnant for the listener. What is your perspective on his inclusion of that?
This is maths rock. Honestly, it's as simple.
Is
It's as
it
simple
math
as
rock?
that.
Is that what you said?
No, it's as simple as that. It's a 4/4 song, so he does it 16 times.
Well, maybe he could have done it 8, right?
Yeah,
Like
it would
any
have
verb,
worked.
any
Eight wouldn't have
multiple
been.
four.
8 wouldn't have been enough. So the whole thing with the end of this song is it's frustration, because I mean I think he starts the song off, his delivery is like, I'm trying to tell you something, please listen, and then the chorus comes in and then it's like, for God's sake, I am trying to tell you something, and then we get into this bridge and the outro and it's like, oh right, okay, I'm just gonna. So I think by the end of it, the fact that he's breathless and he's gone through this entire sort of frustration thing is the reason that you get it 16 times. He's, you know, it's the old adage, he's hammering home the point. And it's quite nice for it to be a vocal sort of inclusion of getting the point in instead of it being a musical one, because a lot of the time what you'll do is you'll get musical repetitive hooks, whereas this is a vocal repetitive hook, and you can't tell me that you don't have that little phrase stuck in your head every time you listen to this song.
Yeah.
It's subliminal.
It's very therapeutic, right?
It's subliminal.
Like
That's
it
what
comes
it's
off
like.
meditative.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
almost room mantra territory, and that's what it is. Because I think
I think that's what I was meaning, but that's such a better way to say it. Yeah.
I think about it's like he's calming the listener down and giving that like final encouragement in the song, but also himself.
Yeah,
Through,
exactly.
through the writing at the same time. I like when we saw this in concert, I cried the entire song. Like Sakamoto had just passed away like a month and a half prior, and they did this beautiful tribute to him on the screen before they played the song. And then like I already loved this song so much because of Yoongi's passionate rap and Woosung's haunting vocals, and just hearing it live, especially seeing it after the tribute for Sakamoto, was so powerful. And I was literally sobbing the entire time. And it wasn't until this line coming in at the end of Everything Will Be Okay where I was able to start to calm down. And I think that's like, it was by design, you know, it was by design to, as a listener, he wanted you to feel those emotions that he's going through and be able to also calm down and know through that mantra that it will be okay by the end of that. That's what I always think about every time I get to that line and that part of the song and how it brings you back down from all the intensity.
Yeah. All right, let's move into talking about the meaning, because I feel like I've been wanting to talk about the meaning and teetering on it ever since we started this great conversation. But before we do, let's hear from Suga himself. So he did appear on IU's show called Palette, and this is a great clip of him talking about his meaning behind the song.
류이치 사카모토 선생님이 음반을 쳐주시고 또 더로즈라는 이제 밴드의 친구가 있거든요. 우성이라고 보컬을 해줬는데 아이돌 연예계 생활을 하면서 저는 그 회사에 선배가 없었어요. 뭐 미국을 처음 갔었던 순간도 그렇고 뭐 1위를 처음 해서 어떻게 해야 될지에 관한 뭐 조언 같은 걸 바라본 적이 없었거든요. 나를 보고 꿈을 꾸는 친구들 그리고 우리를 보고 꿈을 꾸는 친구들한테 해주고 싶은 이야기를 좀 많이 담아놨거든요.
위로가 되는 메시지였어요. 근데 저는 그 노래 들으면서 어쩌면 슈가 씨 본인한테 해주고 싶은 얘기인가? 라는 생각도 들었었어요. 그래도 돼. 괜찮아. 스스로를 다독인다는 그런 위로도 받아서 그렇기 때문에 더 공감이 확 됐던 것 같아요.
그렇죠. 뭐 연예계뿐만 아니라 사실 이 시대를 살아가는 이제 소위 말하는 청춘들이 20대, 30대들이 굉장히 가혹한 시대라고 저는 표현을 많이 하거든요. 반대로 또 그런 음악들을 내면서 저 또한 좀 위로를 많이 받기도 하고요, 저는. 그래가지고 저도 굉장히 애정하는 곡 중 하나입니다.
Bethany, why don't we start with you? What's your kind of interpretation overall on the meaning of this song?
Yeah, it's definitely a message that he's sending to his younger musicians that kind of look up to him or idolize him, and telling them to really take time to rest. Kind of going back to this Yoongi being hospitalized, and that's when he wrote the verses. The fact that he had been so stressed and working so hard to the point where he needed medical attention, it just makes a lot of sense that these verses came pouring out of him when writing this song, because his body was giving him no choice but to rest and recover. So he just is really speaking to younger people that, hey, I understand you have a dream. I had a dream too, but you can't only live off of snoozes, and that you really have to give yourself the time to recover, and it's okay to recover. And it continues to make sense to me that he compares the song to Dear My Friend, as Snooze is just a letter that he's written to his younger brothers pursuing the same dream. But also it comes off kind of like what IU was saying. It kind of comes off like it's a letter to himself as well, that he wished he had heard this piece of advice when he was younger. And then lastly, what I really like about just the title itself, Snooze, and the double meaning of dream, and how, yes, it's something you aspire for, but it's also something that you need to sleep in order to have an actual dream, a literal dream. And so I feel this song really highlights how sleep and rest is essential to keep dreaming.
Oh, I love that. You're right. It's kind of like, I said it as like he's giving permission, which I think is so impactful to his hubeis or his juniors. But you're right. I think he is saying then kind of that play on that meaning of that word. You need to rest in order to keep pursuing those dreams in your career, or you're going to get burnt out, or you're going to get physically and mentally sick and can't pursue those. Kayla, what's your breakdown on the meaning?
Yeah, I don't know if you shared it in Palette with IU or when it happened, but I know that he talked about that when he was writing this song, he wondered if he would have suffered less when he was coming up in the industry if he had someone telling him those messages. And he hoped that junior artists could learn from that and find comfort when they listen to his song. I know he also said that he dedicated this song to everyone in the world who survives on snoozes, sleeping only in snippets and still striving to fulfill their dream. So I love that this is a blanket comfort song and it can be applied to so many different things that you're going through. There's just a few lyrics that I want to share that still stand out to me to this day. The first one is from the first verse where he talks about, it could be a strenuous journey. The path I've walked may look like a flower path, but know that it was a thorny one with enemies surrounding on all sides. And, it's easy to see BTS now and, where Yoongi is now in his career and think like, wow, they have it all. They have this flower path that they've walked, but it was a struggle the entire time. And so he wants to remind people like, it wasn't always easy and it's okay that it's not always easy. He also reminds us of our why. What is it that made you choose this painful and lonely path? Don't ever forget that reason, even after time passes. This to me is so powerful because we all make choices in our life and they affect us, for years to come. We have to be happy with those choices. We have to remember why we chose this, and I've always found power in that for sure.
Kelly, what is your breakdown of the meaning behind the song?
I think for me, because obviously this is a standalone track for me, I found this obviously via The Rose. And then obviously I was like, okay, I really like Sugar's flow, so I really like that album. And I kind of got into it that way. So for me, I haven't got the baggage of the BTS story, if that makes sense. So I kind of look at this and listen to it, and I hear the anguish in what he's saying. And a lot of what he's saying to me feels a little bit like Man in the Mirror. It isn't necessarily, and I do kind of mean in that Michael Jackson way. It is a man talking about what he's been through, and if he had his chance again, would he repeat it? One of the lines that always stands out to me is when you show me a faint smile without words, because that's twofold in the sense of they're the wins, because every now and again you'll just do a faint smile and it's like, okay, I've got this, I'm doing this. But sometimes you do a faint smile when it's like, oh God, this is all going to hell. And to me, I can see both sides of the equation in this song, in the lyrics. This is a guy who is talking very heavily about his path, literally, metaphorically, about how he's moved forward and how he has survived, for want of a better term. And I think he's kind of, it's as we've said many times before, this is a diary entry. It's one of those type of songs, because there's always multiple types of songs. This is definitely not a Lego brick song that you've stuck together. This is from somebody who is living at the time, living through it, working through it, and wanting it to be, for want of a better term, it's almost like a sort of, look, this is what I've gone through. I really don't want you to go through it. This is my heeded warning. Please pay attention. But it's delivered in such a beautiful way. And then we get on to what is the chorus. Now, obviously, Anne and I are very used to the language of what's used in the chorus. This is very much from the dictionary of the Rose. This is definitely Sammy's vernacular. It's his comfort zone. He tends to use this sort of flowery, in both terms. He always uses the concepts of flowers and the environment to describe how he's feeling and how he relates to it. And it's a very clever sort of pull back and a little sort of plug for the band, because, you know, obviously it ties back very nicely to who he is and where it's from. So it's very cleverly done. It's beautiful. And I think it's one of those things that you really do need to, I don't think you can just listen to it. I think you need to sit and read it as a piece of poetry to fully understand how in depth this story is that he's trying to tell. And I think sometimes it could be.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with you that it feels like a diary entry, and that you need to really read through the lyrics. If you're not a Korean speaker, then really understand the translations to truly get, you're right, the impact of what he's saying. I think what I find so fascinating, and I don't know if he thought of this a little bit when he chose Woosung, but you know, that is Woosung's writing style. But also it's not like he kind of put that writing style in and it didn't fit with the rest of the song, because Yoongi does use language like blooming, flowers, petals. So he uses that throughout his own rap lyrics. So I thought that was so interesting then that he chose Woosung, who leans into that kind of language and used that kind of language still in his chorus. And then I think too, like, how it feels like other artists receive this song, whether it was what I think probably Woosung felt with his backstory and dealing with the challenges of being a trainee in the K-pop system and how hard that was for him, and losing his dream multiple times in his life. El Capitan, you know, losing his voice as a singer, and saying this song made him feel so sad. Even IU, IU, who has been in the industry since she was a girl, saying like, hey, like this felt like you were kind of saying to yourself, it's going to be okay. I feel like even other artists, as they listen to this song, can really, probably it resonates. There's a couple lyrics I want to throw out to the group for your feedback, because Kayla, as you shared some of the most powerful lyrics, these stick out. He says, "This place is a battlefield without gunfire. Your same colleagues are your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
The cruel and the pretty, of the good and the evil, that the numbers show. If I can't kill others, I'll die. If this floor isn't a ring, excuse me. So why do you have to kill someone?" Wow. Like, what's people's reaction to those lyrics?
I just think about, the K-pop industry is so competitive, and they are not only competitive with each other, but now they're also competing with Western music a lot and wanting to gain popularity in the Western music world. On top of that, even within their own groups, they are facing the pressure of never taking a break, of continuing to pump out albums and performances and tours back to back to back. So like, I think that would feel very chaotic, like a battlefield. You have different agencies competing. Within your agency, there's different groups that want the more popularity or might get more attention from the agency as well. Like, your same colleagues are your enemies. Like, thinking about even competition within their own label, and how that could be very daunting to think. Like, thinking about like BTS and TXT publicly, they've always had such a great relationship, very, like, BTS being very supportive of TXT and excited about their come up. But imagine if it were a different culture within HYBE, where this is your competition. Only one of you are going to get our main focus, and all of the resources and production and everything that you need to be successful. So, fight it out. It definitely, I think, has felt that way for Yoongi, right? Coming up as BTS, kind of like them clawing tooth and nail to the top of the industry, reaching places they never thought they would make.
Yeah. It's such a competitive industry, like Kayla was saying, especially in K-pop. Like, it never seems to end either. Like, they have this trainee life where they're competing against the others to be able to debut. Once they debut, they're competing against other K-pop groups for the most streams or most listens. And then it's hard not to go to BTS again, but even BTS now, it seems like they're competing with their past selves by constantly having to outdo previous albums, previous songs. And so, yeah, I just feel like him saying, if I can't kill others, I die. Like, if I can't do better than I did before, I'm not going to be relevant anymore. It's just this constant, it feels very cutthroat, feels very life and death for him. And I'm sure it speaks to other artists too, that, it's exhausting to live this way.
Yeah. Kelly, what's your perspective as a music artist?
Once you're on the treadmill, you don't get off. If you do get off, it's really hard to get back on. And it is one of those things where you will always struggle with your own competitiveness, let alone everybody else that's around you. You always want to be better than the last thing you did, because you are only known for what you put out next. It's so quickly that you can be dropped, like hot coal. You can be finished in a day. And that is a thing. So not only have you got the competitive nature of how that industry is run, which it's not new. I think a lot of people see the K-pop sort of industry and the way that the companies have run as a new thing. It isn't. It's all modelled off of the back of Stock Aitken and Waterman in the 1980s, and the pop factories that were run then. It's just the fact that being, as Korea are, They are proficient at what they do. They take ideas like a mobile phone and make it 10 times better than everybody else's. And that's what they've done. They strive and they push and they create greatness out of it. And that is something that is unbelievably difficult to comprehend. It's hard enough, your own competitive nature of you want to be better, but to be pitted against everybody else who has the same thing. And I mean, we know that they're more of a family than they are an actual band. And I think that's possibly one of the reasons in Korea why they start them out as young as they do, because they have to form families. Whereas in the Western world, they don't generally start them out that young. You tend to, you've already gone through your adolescence. You've already been a bit of an arsehole and everything else and come out the other side. So you've kind of got that wiggle room. Whereas if you are literally, you've grown with these people, you've got a tighter bond. So there could be the competitiveness within the group, but thankfully they don't seem to have it. They seem to have this, they release solo albums and they all just seem to be, oh, well done, mate, that's brilliant. You know, there seems to be this love and support there. And I don't know if this is a line that you've highlighted, Anne, but I mean, it's always one that sticks in my head. And I think this just ties back so well to what you've just said. Your success will become both a leash and a shackle.
That is a good line. Yeah.
And to me, that is the warning of the entire thing. You know, it's like, yeah, your success, but you're still held back because you can't be completely everything that you want to be. Yeah.
I know. I feel like this entire song, like I could dig into every lyric. And that's why it's so heavy. Like this is like, to me, it is kind of a heavy song. Maybe as we wrap up, it'd be interesting to kind of get Kayla and Bethany, your thoughts on how he used the literal direct lyrics from So Far Away. Now that was his first mixtape, which I feel like that came out maybe like 2016. This was 2023. So it's interesting he pulled from that time. What's your thought on why he specifically used like the exact same lyrics?
Is this when he was talking about dreams?
Yes.
And So Far Away. First of all, So Far Away, I feel like was one of his, as far as his solo work songs, one of his biggest ones early on, because it was with Saran and it just gained such popularity. And the Saran's chorus in it is iconic, right? It's beautiful. It doesn't quite have the haunting nature that Woosung has here in this chorus, but it has the impact of like that pleading and the needing. And man, he's talking about dreams in such a similar way between how he was dreaming in So Far Away in 2016 and how he was dreaming here in 2023, wanting to like not be afraid to fall, but still like don't let the fear get in the way of your dream and of continuing to dream. But this time around, he's adding in that layer of being able to snooze, being able to rest within it, and knowing that that dream can still be there for you, even if you give yourself a break.
Yeah. So his lyrics are, as you said, Kayla, dream. Your creation will be with you at your life's end. Dream. It will be generous no matter where you are. Dream. You will be in full bloom at the end of your ordeal. Dream. The start or beginning will be humble. The end will be great. Like, I kind of feel like if we think of him saying that in 2016, still at the start of his career, he'd only debuted 3 years prior to that. I feel like he's saying to kind of like dream, like he's thinking forward, right? It's like your creation, like he's kind of like a mantra to himself, right? Like where now 10 years after his debut in 2023, it almost feels like he's saying the same thing, but kind of like Bethany, it goes right back to what you said, the dual meaning of dream, not his aspiration, but he's almost kind of saying to these juniors, or even a little bit to himself, rest as in dream. Like, take that break. Your creation will be with you at the end, right? It's okay. That's kind of how I see like the difference in how he's using it, which I think is so impactful in terms of, again, what you said, Kayla, the meaning of that first song, So Far Away, versus now kind of what he's trying to convey in Snooze.
Yeah, and like it's okay to step outside of the rat race of, you know, not fully get off the treadmill. Like Kelly said, you can't get off the treadmill, but maybe slow down the speed a little bit. It's okay to do that. And to like that line, like it will be generous no matter where you are. You'll be in full bloom at the end of your ordeal. Like getting to feel that in your present moment too, not just at the end. If you can slow it down for a minute and be able to engage in the gratitude of where you are at in your dream and in, you know, your goals and in your career and all the success that you have. If you're not able to step back, how can you appreciate where you're at? And that's where those lines hit me too.
I just have to say, like, I love the inclusion of this on this song. I mean, this was on his first mixtape, and it just is so relevant that he, in this song, it's not only seems like a letter to his past self, but obviously it's a letter to his younger brothers. But to include it here on D-Day, which is now his third solo album that he's put out, that he really gets to harken back to that time and still repeat those words to himself now and just show kind of his history and growth as an artist too. It's really beautiful that he included it.
Yeah, well, let's wrap up with hearing from Suga. This is, Kayla, you kind of mentioned this a little bit ago in our conversation, the tour for the D-Day tour, and just how impactful it was to hear this song live. So let's give a listen to a live clip of Snooze. I tell you, just the face, like his face, right? You see it come through we talked about just his delivery and how intense. You could just see it in that clip. Oh, so good. All right. Well, that was a great conversation. Thank you, Kayla, Bethany, for diving into Snooze. Kelly, for me, as you know, Kelly, this was so fun. This is my two worlds coming together. I was okay, right? I didn't get too deluded.
You were well behaved, to be honest. I'm kind of shocked. What happened to Anne?
I know. I'm on my best behavior with Kayla and Bethany. I can't
oh, right, okay. It's only because we've got guests. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Normal behavior will resume. There we go. I was half expecting that.
All right, let's wrap up with, I took it easy. Kelly knows when it's just her, Kayla Bethany, I torture her with the Would You Rather challenge, picking the lesser of two evils. Okay. But since you're here, it's going to be fun picking, okay? It's going to be something fun. And Kelly, you can do the Rose, or you can do BTS on this. So this is open for anybody, BTS or the Rose. Okay. But we're all going to pick one person out of these two groups to spend the day in the studio with. So you get to spend the whole day, and we're going to make music and just hang out in the studio. So but we can only pick one person out of those two groups. Who are we picking and why? Bethany, let's start with you.
Oh gosh, this is a hard question. Just one person. I'm gonna have to say Yoongi. He is just such an incredible producer, songwriter. I love his just versatility and what he can play too, with his piano and more so doing guitar now. I would just love to know his creative process and what it looks like. And he's worked with so many other artists too and other producers that I think it would just be fascinating to sit in the room and be with him. I know that they just came out with the Netflix documentary, and seeing Yoongi in the studio with Jimin, I think they said they were in there for like 5 or 6 hours playing around with Arirang. And I just was sitting on my couch like, oh, I'm so jealous. Like, I wish I could have been there and sat with them for 6 hours just trying to figure out how they were going to put this song into Body to Body. So yeah, I would have to say Yoongi.
I wasn't sure if you were going to pick J-Hope because you love his style.
Truthfully, I would, if I could really do whatever I wanted, it would just be all 3 of the rap members. Like, I would love to be with all 3 of them in the studio. That would be, I mean, life complete at that point. Like, I'd be like, all right, like, this is perfect. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because we're talking so much about Yoongi, and I love D-Day so much. But yeah, J-Hope is, I mean, obviously he is my double bias, so it's hard to pick. It's truly hard to pick.
It is. All right, Kelly, what about you? Who are you picking?
Oh, straightforward. Suga.
Yoongi!
Yeah. Oh, no, literally. Without a shadow of a doubt.
See,
I would so happily sit in the studio with him.
Between him and Dojun, like they're both kind of mad scientist genius.
Yeah. Yes, no. 2 very different animals.
Yeah, they are different, style. Right? Yeah.
And yeah, I think Dojuni tends to, he picks ideas, he throws it at a wall, and if it sticks. Whereas sometimes I think Suga is a little bit more calculated, and understanding how he is more calculated in his production is what I'd really like to know. You can see it. I sat and watched the documentary yesterday, and I could see him in the background. Everybody else is just bouncing around, doing their thing, being the guys that they are. He sat in the background, literally just noodling on a guitar, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's already 23 steps ahead with where this song's going.
I remember that scene, Kelly. I love that scene.
Yeah, yes. He's just sat in the back going, and it's like, no, he's already got this mastered. He's just waiting for these idiots to catch up. So no, definitely in the studio with him.
Meticulous is like a great word, to describe Yoongi in that process. I love that. All right, Kayla, what about you?
Wow. I have had that scene on my mind that Kelly just mentioned too, and thinking about this, I was going to say Yoongi, but since you guys already said it, I'm going to say RM from BTS because Bethany and I often relate RM and Yoongi as being like the Lennon and McCartney of BTS in their how they produce and write songs together frequently. And seeing RM writing lyrics, obsessing over the direction, the tone, everything about this album, I would love to be in the studio with him, even to just be a fly on the wall and just see what he comes up with, or his own process there would be very cool for me.
Yeah. How he just, as you said, really, really thinks about his language choice, his word choice. And I think he's one of the best lyricists out there. Like, I like Yoongi's rap flow better and his style better, but I like the way RM thinks about language and how he uses language to get his point across. I think he's so creative in so many ways. All right, Kelly, who do you think I'm going to pick, Kelly?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. Go on, surprise me.
Who am I going to spend all day with if I get to choose?
I don't know. Is this the moment suddenly Anne materializes on this podcast?
Yes, I get the Lulu and Sauce, and I pick Kim Woo-sung because I always.
There we go.
I'm going to throw an audible.
There we go. What a shock! What a shock!
I'm going to throw an audible though, because I get to do that because I made up the question. I'm going to do Kim Woo-sung and Kim Namjoon because my fantasy is being between these two men.
Literally, probably.
Yes.
And there we go. There's the source content. Oh, look, there we go. We were missing it. There
Play
we
One
are.
More Night by
Perfectly
BTS.
fine. Yeah, perfectly fine conversation. And she just has to just drops it in. There we go.
Can we add? I mean, just add like body to body. You know, I just want to be body to body with those two men. No, seriously, in all seriousness, two of the best lyricists in the industry, in my opinion. I just think if those two people could write a song, wow. What an incredible
You do
song.
realise something, though, don't you? That most songwriters, when you're writing lyrics, unless you're doing a session like you've seen in documentaries and clips, and and you're sat in a studio, and those type of sessions are normally when you've done your editing and you're going back in because you need to something doesn't quite fit right, and you need to rework it, and then that's when you look at it. Or if you've got Hyde behind you and they just go, here's a very expensive studio in California, you can have 6 months in there. Just go for it. Yeah. Most mere mortals tend to write lyrics when they are traveling on public transportation. They'll be stood in the shower and suddenly go, oh, God, I've got to get it down. So it could be body to body with some of the places. I'm sure some of those lyrics have been written, to be honest.
I mean, we can go get in the shower. That's okay. that sounds like a wonderful day to me. And a great way to end it, Kelly, isn't it?
Yeah,
nice
let's
way
leave
to end
it there.
things.
Yeah, it's going to get worse.
Let's leave it there.
Oh.
All right. Well, thank you, Kayla and Bethany from Stanning BTS.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was such a fun and engaging conversation.
So incredible. It was a wonderful conversation, and it was great revisiting Snooze. It's been a while since we've thought about this song, and so this was so much fun. We love to do this. So thank you.
Well, listeners and viewers, if you love BTS, check out their podcast. Check out their IG. What's your IG handle? Tell everybody where they can find you.
Stanning BTS Pod or Stanning BTS Podcast on Instagram, Twitter. And then you can find us literally any platform where podcasts are. That's where we'll be. So look us up.
Yeah, and we'll have all of their information linked in the episode notes. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Please rate our podcast. Leave us comments about this episode. We always love to hear your feedback at KRockcast. Follow us on social media as well if you don't already. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and X. We are at KROK_cast all across the board.
Click here to subscribe.
You can definitely email us at krock.cast@gmail.com and check out our website, www.krockcast.com. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.